All right, Ocean, up to you, man. Lead the way and tell me where you want to go.
Alrighty, so welcome. Tonight we're going to be going over a really important topic in trading. Um, and this is one of the fundamental parts of investing in trading, from what I've understood. And you can feel free to chime in right there. But this is something that I've been working on, and it's great to have the opportunity to ask you some questions.
Mhm.
So, just to start it off, why don't you kind of explain what exactly technical analysis is?
Sure. So, well, in the realm of like trading and investing, right? You have like, I mean, in investing, you look at business fundamentals, which is the cash flow. And then in trading, you look at the price. And so technical analysis, by definition, I guess you could say, is just the study of price action, right? Now, technical analysis, I think it's evolved, and we could actually look into the history of it. And I guess shame on me, I don't remember all of the history with the Japanese candlesticks and all that. But I
Right.
know it derives from price and the evolution of technical analysis. You have all its derivatives and stuff like that. So if you recall one of the Sunday lectures that I talked about in technical analysis, I like to look at the primary. The primary for me is the price and volume. Then the secondary, you have like the overlays, and then the tertiary, you got the indicators and such. So yeah, that's sort of my definition of technical analysis: the study of price and volume over time.
Yeah, well said. I agree. Why would you say it's so important? I mean, a lot of traders, when they talk about trading, a lot of them default to technical analysis. So, why do you think it's so important, and what is its kind of place in your, I guess, investment psychology?
Yeah, I mean it could be it should be objective, but then like there's so many people interpreting the body of knowledge that it could be quite subjective.
Right.
So I don't think every trader uses it the same unless you kind of define them by what time frame they're playing. So in some cases, like I think a day trader might use technical analysis in a different way as a swing trader, and very different from like maybe a investor who's applying light technical analysis using position trading or position investing. So it varies by the personas, the personalities of traders out there. Um, but yeah, I'm sorry. What was your specific question?
Like, um, why would you say it's super important? Like, is it?
Yeah,
Do you think it's
it.
important to pay attention to it?
I personally think it's important. It's what I kind of start off with, technical analysis. I did go to school for finance and learn like business fundamentals and stuff like that. But to this day, it's important because it acts as like sort of like a price compass for me. Like, how do you know what price you want to get in? And then at the
Right.
same time, how do you know where to risk manage and when to get out? So that it's just like a framework that you're applying to the chaos that we're seeing, right? It's like there's chaos everywhere, but we're applying structure to it. In this case, the volatility or the chaos and the price action is everywhere. But if you don't apply some sort of framework like technical analysis, you won't be able to identify spots where you feel most comfortable to get in, and also where you feel most comfortable to get out. So it's a combination of providing you a point of entry, but also a point of exit for your risk management. Very important. Risk management is super important when it comes to trading.
Yeah, very well put. I mean, from what I've seen too, it's like, I mean, there's so many things going on, and really, like, a stock can go up, but it's not going to go up directly, right? So I think being able to kind of pinpoint where to get in and out is so important, and I guess that's where you're going with it, right? Like, that's technical analysis is going to tell you where exactly to get in, where exactly to get out, kind of give you some rules, give you some guidelines, and all the chaos that's going on, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So leading into my next question, I guess, besides technical analysis, what other sorts of analysis would you say there are, and which ones would you say we should pay attention to?
Oh boy. I mean, you could really go all over the place, right? But
Right.
I personally think technical analysis is a good start.
Hmm.
Other forms of analysis, you also have like sentiment analysis, right? Or let's say broader market sentiment analysis, which is what is the market feeling? What is the overall market breadth? What is the market doing? Is it escalating higher? But then sentiment analysis could be for a specific stock, like for example, today with Nvidia or yesterday with Nvidia earnings, right? The
Right.
sentiment is very positive with the
Hmm.
AI narrative. Speaking of narrative, that's another form of analysis. So there's sentiment analysis, event-driven analysis, or narrative analysis. Event-driven is kind of like, it's just the markets are on 24/7. Well, not the stock market. There is a closing time, but if you think about it in economics perspective, transactions are 24/7 around
Right.
the world. So sentiment or narratives, I mean, are always flowing. There's always a story out there. And if you understand that, then, well, there's AI stocks at one point. Well, right now, there's crypto stocks or cryptocurrencies at one point, crypto-related stocks as well. There were the Ebola stocks. There were, software stocks. Like the stories just kind of go around. Like people like that aspect of the market. So it really helps to understand the narrative, which is again also a form of like psychology analysis, right? Again, I'm kind of going everywhere because I'm not really giving you this is a very broad question is what I'm saying, because you got
Right.
technical analysis, sentiment analysis, fundamental analysis, macro analysis, geopolitical analysis or geopolitical analysis, or government analysis, government fundamental analysis. What else? You got business model analysis, you got cap table analysis. Again, going back, business model is like, how does the business make money? And then cap table analysis or equity table analysis is now who owns the company, right? And then you could have like derivative analysis where you're analyzing the options, or you're analyzing a derivative of price action. So you're
Right.
analyzing like something like MACD or RSI,
Right.
which in
Right.
my eyes is like a tertiary indicator.
Hmm.
What else? There's just so many. There's really in this recent day and age, you also have social media analysis, right?
Right.
Because there's a data point
Hmm.
there now, because traders tend to trade online on the internet, and they'll basically build they'll there's a community of them out there somewhere out in the world. So yeah, there's also that. Plenty of analysis, and the list can go on and on and on, I would say. But after some point, you kind of get a feel of like which one fits you best in terms of personality. There's also like some random analysis out there, like astrology analysis or like the moon pattern analysis, where like, is it a full moon or whatever? I don't believe in that. But it's just interesting how all of these analysis forms of analysis develops over time, right? Another interesting one that comes top of mind is actually for the short sellers, where they would analyze fraudulent people and where those fraudulent people go next, and they would
Oh
short those
wow.
stocks. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Man.
So there's like the front side of like, venture capital technology analysis,
Right.
go long on, really
Hmm.
strong technology. Then there's the back side, which is like, all right, these are shitty companies with like fraudulent leaders or executives, and we think it should
Right.
go down. There's also ETF analysis and then ETN analysis. ETF is exchange traded funds, which is basically a basket of stocks or a basket of it'd be interesting to see a basket of ETFs. ETNs are a little bit different, exchange traded notes. It's a basket
Right.
of a combination of ETF stocks and contracts that expire, like options.
Wow.
So yeah, and then there's like sector analysis and industry analysis. Sector analysis would be like by technology, communications, healthcare, industrials, etc. But industry analysis, you get a little bit more, granular, and you look at like, all right, within technology, you have enterprise software. So there's a lot. There's a lot that we could double click on and get closer into.
So, I mean, great. That was amazing. But really to narrow it down, because like you said, there's so many out there that you can analyze. But for the beginners out there, what would you say is the areas that they should kind of focus on? Because like with the markets today and with technology and the internet, there's so many just sources of information. I think we've talked about this before, but like there's just so many things going on, right? There's Barron's, there's Wall Street Journal, but you also have like, straight up charts from Thinkorswim. You
Yeah,
have company data that you can just go into investor relations, excuse me.
yeah,
10Ks, right?
yeah.
Finviz. So for a beginner, like I feel like it's a lot of information. So what would you kind of recommend someone start with if they were kind of beginning their trading journey?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I guess you could say like when I started my trading journey, there wasn't enough information, right? But now that's kind of changed. Now we have too much information, and you got to figure out what's good information to follow. It's gonna be hard. I admit you're also gonna probably experience information overload a lot sooner than maybe like the last 10 years ago, let's say.
Right.
So you got to kind of like pace yourself and consume consume the information in a way where you know you could keep going, because I think it's more about the long game in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I
Yeah.
think there's like FOMO about like, oh, I might miss out on this stock. It's gone up so much, like Nvidia, blah blah blah. But the reality is like you have your entire lifetime to play this game.
Yeah.
And it's much better to kind of like pace yourself and just understand the beauty of like the day-to-day lessons. So for me personally, if you ask me like where's a great start, if I were to do it over again, I probably just watch the markets day by day. Like
Gotcha.
start digesting, how does the market move every day? What happened today? What happened to the stock? You could focus on just a group of stocks like the FANGs. You don't have to look at everything, but the point is, the best thing to do for a beginner is just to start looking at the markets, start engaging with the markets, right? There's a difference between looking and engaging with the markets.
Right.
You're looking at the markets, but are you really thinking about why the markets move, and how are you engaging with the markets? Are you asking critical questions in your mind?
Right.
So start with that, and then start with like a standard strategy. Like, well, one is like start looking at the markets, start engaging with the markets on a daily basis. If you want to develop a skill set, I still engage with the markets daily to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, if you want to fire off some trades to develop that trading experience or transactional experience, I would say stick with the FANGs. Like start off with
Gotcha.
like the stocks that everyone knows, right?
Right.
Like the
Right.
the big ones, not the penny stocks. Don't go for the penny stocks, because I think that's a little bit more of a advanced concept, and you got to be
Right.
more transactional in that sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, start engaging with the markets, engaging with the markets, and start off with the FANGs. I think the FANGs are great, or even the S&P 500. But ideally, I think the FANGs are better. So look at the Microsoft, look at the Meta or Facebook, the Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, etc.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, again, great input from you. If I just wanted to ask a fun question, what would you say are your top three favorite stocks of all time, or companies, I should say, um, that are quite large? So we're talking maybe above 200 billion market cap.
So like a mega cap. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first one that comes to mind is actually Microsoft.
Yeah. Definitely.
Microsoft is probably hands down my favorite. It's a pretty diversified technology business. It has
Mm-hmm.
everything from what most people know as like the consumer products, which would be
Right.
like, Xbox gaming, to Windows operating system, to
Right. Right.
365, Windows 365.
Mm-hmm.
But they also have a very powerful cloud business, which is their Microsoft Azure,
Right.
which is pretty much up there. That's like number 2 in the world, right? So it's funny because if you ask me the top 3 stocks, I'm going to tell you the public clouds, which is basically Microsoft, well, in this order, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google.
Right.
Those are literally the top 3 stocks of the digital economy. But
Right.
I chose Microsoft because on top of the diversified business model that they have, like a pretty strong one, they relentlessly keep innovating, right? I mean, ChatGPT got popular with OpenAI. They did a deal with OpenAI to own a significant material portion of the company. The leadership's great. I love it when listening to the earnings call, Satya Nadella. He's just a really influential speaker on call, and yeah, they're also kind of like playing into like the AI narrative, which is probably the hottest thing on this planet right now. So
Right.
Microsoft be number 1. Number 2, I mean 1 and 2, these are pretty much the same. It'd be Amazon. Again, Amazon, similar motion as business model as Microsoft. They're B2B to C, right? Most people know them as the B2C, which is Amazon.com,
Right.
everything from A to Z. But they have a massive presence in enterprise software. Like they're like the winners of enterprise software with their
Right.
Amazon AWS.
AWS. Yep.
Yeah, so if you look into AWS, it's just like Egyptian hieroglyphics, right? Like it's just you got all these different products, and the average person just doesn't know anything about it. But that stuff actually powers like everything, like, well,
Yeah.
everything software, everything digital. So yeah, that's a major important company. And then the other one's just Google, right? Again, these big, I mean, now that I kind of talk about it, these 3 companies, what they have in common is that to scale to that size, they have a model of like a business model that's B2B to C, and
Mm-hmm.
even B2G, business to government.
Right.
So business to consumers, right?
Right.
But yeah, I guess I have a bias because enterprise software.
Right.
Those 3 would be enterprise software.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I listened to some of my first earnings calls this past quarter. I listened to the Fangs, right? And honestly, out of those, I found Microsoft to just be the most interesting. I mean, when the CEO was talking, he was, it was so content filled. I mean, it was amazing to listen to be honest.
Yeah.
And I can't lie, like when I listened to Apple, I wasn't as impressed as Microsoft. Microsoft was just amazing. So I kind of, you know, let's just throw in some controversy because just to keep it interesting. But I had this I was telling someone that I thought that Microsoft could actually overtake Apple in terms of like popularity and market cap. Would you say that's like realistic, or do you think Apple has kind of the upper hand there?
There's a potential. I mean, like I mean, where's Apple innovating in terms of AI? I mean, Apple for sure would be distribution of AI. Apple for sure would be the Walmart and Costco, in which
Right.
case the AI is like the new food that is
Hmm.
being distributed at Walmart and Costco, right? So so Apple is going to be the consumer device. So I think they're going to stick around. But Microsoft, I mean, now betting to AI and ChatGPT and all that. Yeah, there's potential, right? What's the current market cap of Microsoft? I pull up real quick. Current market cap compared to Apple, this one's 2.4 trillion. So they're just like about 300 billion away, right? 2.4 versus 2.7. Um, there is a chance. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I think, well, this is just kind of straying away from the topic, but I feel like fundamentally, well, at least from what I've understood, and I kind of read a little bit of Warren Buffett's book, or a book written about Warren Buffett, and it kind of explained like the purpose and the importance of really good leadership.
Mm,
Um, and there's another book called Good to Great, which kind of analyzed these companies that outperformed, the general markets, Coca-Cola during kind of an older time frame, but something they had in common was just their CEOs. And their CEOs were just these like next level team players,
yeah,
not necessarily famous, but they would build companies that would, last.
yeah,
And I feel like Microsoft might have that, right?
yeah,
Might have that advantage. Uh, Again, like I haven't looked into it too much, but I think just from listening to him,
yeah.
um,
No, I think there's something magical that I do see here around great business models that have great leadership.
right.
And when I say great leadership, it's just like a multi-dimensional individual that's charismatic. Charismatic that knows how to rally the crowd and get them to essentially work. Because I mean, at the end of the day, you kind of know my views on this because I know you attend a lot of my events, which is basically business and investing is pretty social, right? So if business is social and you want great leaders who could inspire people because there's that like some individuals out there are unmotivated, some individuals out there are very disciplined and also motivated, right? So but why is that? That's maybe something not really measurable, or I guess I guess you could see it in stock prices like Nvidia, like you could see the emotions of the excitement and all that.
Right.
But I'm talking about a leadership that's operating the business here, right?
Hmm.
So, I mean, the most publicly visible leadership uh, is like the ones that we kind of all know, which is like the Elon Musk, maybe Jeff Bezos, Satya Nadella, kind of, right? Because you're not in the company, so you can't really get a flavor of how they operate. But when they go into the public eye, like Elon Musk, you can kind of see how he operates and maybe speculate or estimate like how he operates on the inside.
Hmm.
But anyways, going back to the forms of analysis that you mentioned or asked about earlier, analyzing the leadership is another form of like analysis that I do out there.
Right.
Yeah. And again, in the beginning, you won't be able to cover all this, but if you put in the time and effort, you should be able to get there.
Right. Um, well, I guess going off of that, if I'm trying to learn kind of the basics of technical and fundamental analysis, do you have any like personal recommendations for where to learn that? I know we went over this, but just to reiterate that.
For fundamental analysis, I would probably encourage reading something fresh. And something fresh would be like a modern company's S1 prospectuses, right? So every IPO that comes out, let's say the next IPO that comes out, a fresh one, just read their S1 prospectus. Read the prospectus, look up the prospectus. That's how you really master the fundamentals and the corporate fundamentals as well. There's the cash flow business fundamentals, or there's the cash flow fundamentals. Then there's like the business, fundamentals. How does it make money? Its business model. Then there's like the corporate fundamentals, which is like the share ownership, uh, who owns most of the shares, the leadership, all that stuff. Are they printing shares, right? So that's the fundamental part. I probably would recommend reading a 10K even. So an S1 or a 10K. But as for technical analysis, there's so many books out there. I would say just get started with one, right? Like if you're looking to day trade, I don't know of any day trading books. I kind of just like learned it on, well, it's been so many years. I kind of just learned it on my own from like just
Yeah.
instinctually trading. But in terms of like trading books, my favorite series, just to kind of learn about, I love the interviews one, which is basically the Market Wizards.
Hmm.
I own that collection, and yeah, I'm happy that it's just a great series to learn about how these hedge fund managers, these OG hedge fund managers, became like great successful investor traders, hedge fund managers, etc. So that's the book I would recommend, the series.
Gotcha. And then you also recommended the technical analysis of stock trends, which I actually read myself. And I think that's like I guess the gold standard for technical analysis.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
The Edwards and McGee, that's a gold
yes,
standard one.
yes.
Yeah, that one. I think that every chartered market technician, if you go for the CMT certification, you have to read that book.
Really? Okay, I
I
didn't
think
know that.
so. I think so.
Wow. Yeah, and for viewers out there, I believe there's a specific year. I don't remember if it was 1945 or 1950, but if you are going to check out that book, make sure to get a version published after that date because that's kind of when the last major revision was. Anyways, to move further into technical analysis, because I think that's kind of the overarching subject here, charts, right? Very fundamental part of, or I shouldn't say fundamental, but a very important part of technical analysis. There's tons of charts out there, right? So obviously candlestick, there's bar charts, there's so many more. But what would you say is kind of like the best chart to use in your personal opinion?
In my personal opinion, the best chart is the one that you will use, which is kind of funny, right? It's literally like you can use anything, but it's did you execute and use it? So just use it, right?
Gotcha.
I personally just like the standard candlesticks. I mean,
Yep.
whatever you see me using on the screen is pretty much like my standard view. The point is, I'd rather just see the person use it because if I know you're using it, you're spending the hours, then you're aligning and adjusting your eyes and mental and everything to it,
Right.
right? So that you instinctually know how this thing moves or how it behaves. So just really putting in the work. I wouldn't
Right.
say there's a holy grail indicator or candlestick setup or chart setup. There's no holy grail out there,
Right.
right? It's just will you use it is more important. Um, and then you'll find your answers along the way.
I
Uh,
agree.
but if you ask me, I just again I guess I don't know if I have a secret sauce, but I just kind of keep coming back to the markets and keep watching and keep attempting the next trade because I think that's where you develop experience,
Yeah.
right? Like
Well put.
what if I told you that you need to hit 10,000 trades or transactions before you really like feel like you're there, right? So does that
Hmm.
mean you go out and transact 10,000 times? Sure, I guess you could, but I mean, if you do it all in one day, it doesn't count, right? I'm talking about transacting 10,000 times over like a period of like many years and
Right.
following up on the transaction
Right.
and like
Right.
how did it perform and what could you have done better? So it's just like performance seeking mentality,
Yeah. I
right?
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really about putting in the hours. I mean, I've done a number of different things in my life, and yeah, it's always been, going back and spending time. And I think it's also like spending quality time. So, I mean, you could just like go into one of your interests and kind of mess around, I guess you could say. But I think the real learning happens when you're sitting there focused, really
Exactly.
paying attention.
Exactly. I mean, like you mentioned, right? Like in this day and age, there's just so much information, and it basically capitalizes on your willpower, especially like social media and all that. It
Right.
capitalizes on your willpower to like okay, I can't seem to put this phone down because of the addiction I have. In which case, like the real journey of like getting to I don't know, I guess the successful destination of investing and trading is to actually just put in the hours. But if you're absorbed in something else, you're never going to put in the hours. And yes, in the beginning, it's super dry. Like it's extremely hard. But I'm happy that I stuck it through personally. And it just got to a point where like now everything clicks and the information is just so exciting to me.
Right.
But in the beginning, first like 5 years, it's just dry and boring, and you just probably fall asleep.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. So yeah, I guess for everyone watching, start anywhere. I guess the overall answer. Pick a chart. Doesn't really matter. I guess I would say though that a lot of people, from what I've seen, tend to use candlesticks. So if you want to speak the language or be able to understand other people's charts, I guess candlestick would make sense from that perspective. But
Yeah, yeah. Now we're talking about like the inter knowledge, or like the community's knowledge, right? Because if
yeah,
you go out there and use something like highly customized, highly long tail, you won't really be able to communicate with like others who are trying to solve the same problem. So
mm-hmm.
my take is, I mean, if you really had to search for a setup, just use a setup that the majority are using.
Yeah,
Yeah. That,
yeah,
because now you also enable yourself to be able to talk to the community. And as
right,
you talk and communicate your ideas, you get better.
yeah,
You
yeah,
refine the logic, you refine the thought process, the frameworks in your mind, and you just get better at it.
yeah. I agree. Um, so you did go over what are the primary elements of technical analysis, right? So price and volume. Um, so what kind of tools, to go even deeper into this, what kind of tools do we use to actually dissect price and volume? Because obviously, I mean, we have patterns, right? We have rectangles, we have uh, heads and shoulders, we have all these different things that are looking directly at price, and we can look at volume. But what kind of tools can we use to analyze them further in a way that kind of simplifies it for us?
Yeah. Well, I mean, any modern day tool is pretty, I would say, acceptable, right? I
Hmm.
personally use FinViz quite a bit. I also use TradingView, Thinkorswim sometimes, but basically those two are enough for me to get the market information that I'm looking for.
Yeah,
Could I ask you to elaborate a little bit further on the tools that you're seeking? Is that what you meant by like FinViz and TradingView, or were you talking about
not
like other?
exactly. I
Okay,
meant
you're talking about something else.
like technical tools, as in you know, moving averages, uh,
Hmm.
things, Bollinger Band, stuff like that. So what are
Yeah.
the yeah,
What are, yeah, complete the question. What are the what?
like what are the ones that you would use, and why would you say they're the most important versus other tools? Because there's so many things out there in every platform nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, I'm always using price and volume,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Price action. That's always first. But
Right.
then everything else, like the secondaries, it'd be like the overlays. The overlays would be like the moving average. And I
Mm-hmm.
use that to kind of calibrate just the general direction. Like just by having the 200-day moving average, I now understand the general direction of the market,
Right. Right.
right? And I could apply a rule to that, which is now kind of like quantitative trading. I'm applying a rule. If it's below the 200-day moving average, then it's still in a downtrend. I'm not interested. If it's above, then now I'm interested. So as
Right.
long as I respect that rule, I know that I could safely protect my positioning view. Um,
Gotcha.
Now the 200 MA is just like the large institutional Great Wall of China, right? They all use that, but you could further refine it down and get closer to like the action if you want to like day trade or swing trade. So then I have moving averages from the 200 all the way down to the 10. And but it's harder for the beginner because you might want to just stick with like a set and trade that combination until you understand it.
Yeah.
So what you see now, I also have Bollinger Bands on there. Now that's like for like a different strategy, but I've traded that strategy in the past. So now it's like you can't mirror someone's like charts without understanding each component. So
Yeah.
I went through the journey of understanding each moving average.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how does the 10 operate? How does the 20 operate? How does the 50 operate? How does the 100 operate? How does the 200 operate? So I took the journey to understand each one, and then as I got bored with it, I had the next one. All right, how does Bollinger Band work? How about volume on a moving average on volume? How does that work? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started applying other stuff like the whole RSI, the MACD. How's that respond with the rest of the markets? Because sometimes that gives you indication of like a buyer building up as well.
Right.
But again, you kind of have to go and do the work of just applying each one and seeing how it works.
Yeah.
So that's why every Sunday's been meaningful for me, because I'm watching the markets. I have to articulate it and teach every Sunday so that it makes me engaging with the markets, which is basically what I said in the beginning. Like, how do you get started in this game?
Right.
Start engaging with the markets. Find a
Right.
way to engage. So yeah, so that's the some of the tools that I use, but it actually gets a little bit more advanced than that. I mean, these days I'm pretty quick on my analysis. I could jump into any company and just instantly dissect it in like less than 10 minutes. Like I could get an instant view, but that came from all the practice from Sunday.
Right.
So yeah, does that kind of help in terms of like some of the toolbox? I guess it's not all of it, but those are
Yeah.
some of the tools that I use in my toolbox.
No, definitely. And for those any people who are new, do you want to just give kind of a shout out to the Sunday session?
Yeah, pretty much, you know, for those of you who are listening to this, I appreciate the time, because, you know, time is precious. I basically have been lecturing on investing and trading for the last 7 years every Sunday, and anyone could join. You can find the link at enterpriseguide.com under events, and that's where the investment club is. I mainly do it, I mean, the journey started off because I wanted to get better at trading and investing. I want to learn as much as I could about the stock market. And I basically accomplished pretty much that from teaching all over the years, in which now it's kind of brought me into several other exciting adventures, right, in life.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's keep it going.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean,
Yeah, so
guys,
so the plug is I guess every Sunday I host an investment club, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and you can find the link at enterpriseguy.com.
yeah. And please, if you have the time, definitely come and join. It's been religious for me almost to watch it. So, hugely helpful, and it's very advanced, but you'd kind of get the hang of it. It's all about just kind of getting your feet wet, right? So, yeah, it's a great resource. Moving back to the indicators, what are your kind of thoughts on this opinion, right? And I've read it from a book, and I kind of also have, I guess, taken on this opinion. And it's just like we should be understanding how indicators are calculated
Yes,
mathematically before we use them. Do you agree
yes.
or disagree? And why?
I well, I agree and disagree
Okay.
because I think there's like it's like it's like riding a bike.
Yeah.
Has it now? I'm sure if you learn how to get on a bike before, then you kind
Yeah.
of know, right? Like, did you read a book before you learn how to ride a bike, or did you just got on and kind of did it?
I mean, you just get on and do it, right?
Well, I mean, then, then in this case, you know, could I also say like I disagree? You got to read about how to ride a bike first before you get on a bike and ride it.
Yeah. I mean, someone taught me. I didn't just, get on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I agree and disagree. I agree because like if you want to get deeper, you know, into the mathematics of like how this actually the engineering of this
Mm-hmm.
indicator or oscillator,
Yeah.
then you develop a higher level of understanding of like how this all works. So
Right.
I do encourage that. Now I also disagree because you could just figure out how to just use the minimum and it works,
Yeah.
right?
I think
So
I think the
like
key
it's
behind.
like here I'll give you a good example with the riding the bike scenario, right? Or example.
Mhm.
You could not read the instructions on riding a bike, but you could definitely ride the bike and learn how to ride the bike. But if you want to get really advanced in terms of like doing bike flips or fixing the bike or whatever about the bike, you won't be able to do that without reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I think the key behind that kind of thought from context. It was in context. The context was essentially like there's so many tools out there, and if you like, not saying that you have to be able to calculate it, but if you can't even understand the formula, then it's probably an indicator that's just not worth using. Like, every like if you know basic mathematics, you can understand what an average is, right? Super easy to calculate. Same thing with exponential moving averages, same thing with MACD, whatever, right? You can understand the formula, but if it's so advanced you can't even understand it, I think that's where that opinion is. Like, if you can't understand it, you probably shouldn't be using it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's as you kind of maybe see it in the conversation that's developing here, there's a
Mhm.
lot of varying opinions and perspectives about the markets and risk tolerance, and
Yeah.
it's just something I've learned from teaching is that, you know, okay, there's so many different opinions, but where do people tend to line up? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, you like vanilla, you like chocolate, you like strawberry, you like, I don't know, bacon, right? All these different flavor people. But somewhere they all agree that, oh, Elon Musk Tesla stock is great,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So yeah, I see that a lot in the markets, and I look for consensus because somewhere they have consensus. And
Mm-hmm.
right now the markets will develop a consensus, and then sometimes they will break down consensus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And an example of a consensus breaking down is kind of like at one moment we were all bullish on like NFTs and stuff like that. And then when the crowd went away, the consensus broke down and then the
Right.
price started to decline.
Right.
So that's something that we want to study. Again, this is something that in the beginning, like you're so focused on technical analysis, you're not thinking about the psychology of the people.
Yeah.
But you see where how I've gone in terms of like my education.
Yeah.
I've talked about the one thing over and over, and then it enabled me to look at another data point.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very similar to driving. In the beginning, when you just first got your driver's license, you're really focused on the road.
Yeah.
But then, like, let's say a year or two in, you're now like driving and texting, right? You could do so many different things. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
encouraging that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm just using it as like a really, really bad example.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you get, that's what I'm saying. If you engage with the markets daily, you develop experience and understanding in the frameworks in your mind where you could kind of like just automate and just have more things on your chart, even though it looks
Yeah.
wild, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point with consensus, and I think something to point out is with technical analysis, consensus is important, right? Because if you have like a group of traders and the majority is looking at one thing and seeing it one way, you got to kind of look at it the same way, right? From what you're saying, because if I'm looking at it a different way, I could be right technically, but it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Like again, goes back to the whole. I mean, if you want to explain your famous example of a chair, right?
Yeah. 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 Basically, I use that example way too much, and it's gonna catch on. I'll be known as the chair guy. But basically, like we, in the reality that we live in today, we all agree that a chair is something that you sit on. But what if I challenged that reality and said, hey, I'm actually the only guy on this planet of like about 8 billion people that believes this chair is something you sit on. Am I right or wrong?
You mean
Right?
Egon?
Huh? Say again?
You said a chair is something to sit on.
Yeah. I'm the only one
Oh,
that
oh, oh!
believes,
You're the only one. Oh,
yeah,
okay,
I'm
okay.
I'm the only one that
Yeah,
believes the chair is something that you could sit on. But everyone
yeah, yeah,
else doesn't believe that. I'm actually wrong
yeah.
in
We'll
that reality.
yeah, we'll brand you as some extremist. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, like
yeah,
that
the
guy.
chair guy.
Yeah, the crazy chair guy that's sitting on the
Yeah,
chair. I can't believe him. I can't
rename
believe
him
what
the
he's doing.
chair guy.
So
Yeah,
that's something that you learn in the markets as you go, because it's like, all right, I always in the beginning you never check yourself because you're full of, I would say, beginner's ego,
mm-hmm.
right? But after time in the market, you lose that beginner's ego. Now you're more like intermediate ego, or
Yeah,
like no ego even, I guess. Robotic, I don't know. Um, you're able to kind of double check yourself, like, okay, is this like a hot moment that I just want to buy Nvidia? Am I FOMOing into this position? Or am I actually, taking a moment to thinking about the investment fundamentals?
yeah,
And like, does it make it logical? Like, what's my risk reward on the technical analysis? Should I get in?
definitely.
Yeah. So these are just emotions that you cannot overcome in the beginning
Mm-hmm.
because it's human, right? And
Yeah,
you get better at it over time as you get older. But I do strongly believe that if you put the time into it, you learn to kind of, I wouldn't say master, but better manage it. Because to
yeah,
this day, I still struggle with like sometimes positions against me, I'm just like, right. But I know that majority of times it's just better to cut it off and go to the next trade.
yeah, definitely. Um, I mean, obviously, there's so many more topics, and hopefully, we'll be able to cover them in the future. I think for a beginner, that was a pretty good walkthrough of kind of some of the basics. Um, I guess from this whole episode,
Mm.
takeaways would be just read, right? I mean, what would be your takeaways? I guess.
The takeaway would be, if this is something that you want to get into, right, which is investing and trading,
Mhm.
start engaging with the markets. Start putting in the hours of engagement with the markets. But also remember that, investing is very different from starting a business. That's something that I didn't think about in the beginning. And this will really help the beginners, which is basically, there's three ways to make money. You go work a 9 to 5, you start a business, or you invest. And I didn't realize that getting into this investing game is just as much work as a 9 to 5 job or starting a business. So
Hmm.
it's a lot of work. And if you choose to get into investing and trading, you got to put in the hours like as though you run a business or you're, corporate executive or whatever. So, yeah, it takes a lot of work, but the takeaway is start engaging with the markets and then learn the lessons of each day. Because if I quiz you right now, right, like how big is your database, your mental database?
Yeah.
And if you're a beginner, you might say, well, I just started. But if you ask me, I could probably go tell several stories about the markets that happened, let's say during the pandemic, and how exactly did the markets, decline during the pandemic, and what did the governments do to step in and control the markets to make it come back up with money printing. You wouldn't be able to tell me that if you were a beginner and starting off.
Yeah.
So every day there's a story and lesson. There's a new data point that the market gives us. That's why I think it's really important to just kind of casually check in every day. These days, I don't have to be at the screen like all the time anymore. I just get a feel because I always have my mind on it anyways. So, yeah, start your engagement with the markets today or as soon as possible if you want to develop a really good skill set and experience in this game.
Gotcha. Well, thank you everyone for getting this far. If you have, thank you so much for the support. I mean, it's been a long episode, but really appreciate it. Um, and thank you to Kay or Enterprise Guy. And again, please, if you can, check out the Sunday lectures. Definitely great learning opportunities. So yeah, we signing off. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Ocean.